so you guys know what an invertebrate is. And so I went out, and what I did was I actually went and I bought this lobster right here. So I have on today's live stream a real lobster. I just cooked him a while ago. He's looking mighty tasty. I think I'm going to give it to my wife and my kids because they love lobster. And my wife and my kids, when they were in Maine, they sailed over to an island. They dug holes in the ground. They put lobster inside of the holes, and then with like burning stones and seaweed, they cooked the lobster. They boiled it in the sand on an island in Maine. It was so cool. So I was like, I have to do that for today's class. So what I'm doing is I am setting him up like so, right here. And we are going to jump in and we are going to draw ourselves a lobster. So I hope that sounds good to everyone. With that, I'm going to jump right into our drawing lesson. So here we are. Okay, so as you guys get ready to draw a lobster with me, as ever, the thing that we do as a group is we look at the big picture, right? So I'm all about looking at the big picture. And the big picture for us is one of like seeing, like, let's say like, we don't want to reduce everything to, or focus on everything. Like we always go for the eyes. Whenever you start to draw a drawing, I'm always drawn to the eyes. Don't go for the eyes. What I want to do instead is I want to see the big picture right here. So for me, the big picture is this. And I just have right here the body of the lobster. And it's more or less like the big broad body. And as I work on that, what I want to do is I want to see all the pieces interconnected to each other. So I have a big lobster claw right here. I have a big lobster claw right here. And this is kind of like faint. It's probably like even hard for you to see it. What I might do, just for you, the sake of everyone who's watching, is I might go with a little bit of a darker pencil. So I'm gonna get a pencil that's like something like, I don't know what this is right here. This is a 4B. You don't need a 4B pencil, but I just want you to see my shapes. And so I'm gonna use a 4B. So there we go right there. We have lobster claw 1 right here, lobster claw 2. So we're getting everything pretty much like mapped out. And then I'm going to see the tail like this right here coming down. So the tail comes down like so. When I teach these drawing lessons, sometimes I laugh to myself because I'm like, they start out so crude and elementary, but that is kind of the lesson in drawing and painting, that you want to see things in a very crude and elementary way to start out with. So we have right here, this mapped out. Okay, then maybe I'm gonna make the tail even, I don't know, a little bit bigger, the body a little bit bigger. So let's go a little tiny bit bigger on the body. Let's push the tail out. And you notice as I'm doing this, that I'm really trying my best to use the windshield wiper grip. I do not want to at all have my pencil out like this and draw tiny details, but rather I want to have my pencil like this and I want to move like big and broad left to right and get those big motions in. So it might even be worth your while to pause in your drawing, hold your pencil up in the air and just move your hand around like that so that you can feel the big broad grip. So that's what I'm really focusing on myself. Okay, so I have all this mapped out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for like something a little bit more specific. So like, let's say I'll go for like the front plane of this guy's, like he has like this section right here. I don't really know what it is, but let's zoom in on it. It's kind of like the section, it like breaks up into 2 right in the main part of the body. So now we'll go back to my drawing. And then it has like this other chamber. So when I draw, at all times, I have my pencil and I have my eraser. I got those side by side. And so now I just kind of like carve out this shape over here. Okay, so now I am up to, let's say, the claw. So for the claw, we're going to focus on maybe like the connecting piece right here. And again, don't worry about if you feel like we're skipping over the cool information, like this guy has all spikes on his claws and stuff like that. Don't worry about that. I promise you that we will get there. So, okay, we have the spikes on his claws. And now, or I'm sorry, we have the kind of the pincers. It's almost like his thumb right here. And then we can cut that off right there. So I think my drawing is being blocked. Let me move it over to right there. That's a little bit better. And all right. Okay, so we have that mapped out. Now I'm going to jump up here to the far claw over here. And I'm going to see about, I'm going back to my lobster, and I kind of want to put it in a better position so that it's not like overlapping. So like maybe something like, I don't know, push it out a little bit further like that. So as I work on a drawing, I'm always like playing around with like the shapes, always like trying to get like everything in like the perfect spot. So, all right, so I have that right there. Now I'm just gonna kind of put that far claw in right over here. So this is really similar to actually working on like the human, like if you're drawing a human figure, or even if you're drawing like a horse running across a field, you want to kind of separate everything into like, in a way, it's almost like separate chambers. So I even do this when I'm drawing like, I don't know, a drawing of my father sleeping on the couch or something like that. I still separate parts of the head, parts of the neck into like chambers. And then I start refining those chambers. So, all right, we're getting a little bit further. Now I'm going to jump over to the tail. Now the tail is pretty cool because the tail, I talk about this a lot, but I like this idea, and I've actually had a live stream devoted to this. You guys probably know, like with a knight's armor. So a knight has armor where they have all these plates, and the plates overlap each other. And when the knight goes to lift up his arm, the plates all insert into each other so that he can move around but still be protected. So that's the same thing with this lobster. So this guy, he has plates right here, and the plates all, it's called articulate. They articulate with each other so that he's protected, but he can still move his tail up and down like that. So as I have my drawing right here, I want to think of each one of those plates as being like, they're like, let's look at it like kind of like up close where you can see it like kind of like somewhat big. So I'm going to move it like right here. So check that out. You see that tail? So we want to think of it as being one big chamber in a way. It's like one huge section. But then we're going to break it up into smaller sections. So there's the big section, but then we're going to have all these plates like overlapping each other. Just like that. So I'm going to just think of it, again, one big broad thing, and then smaller planes within it. And I really do wonder if the knights of old and the armor makers back in the day, if they actually studied, like, how many of you guys know roly-poly bugs? Do you have them where all of you guys live? Yep. So a bunch of hands going up. Yeah. So roly-poly bugs are like, they're just really cool. And it's so neat how you touch them and they curl up into a ball. I really do wonder if the armor makers back in the day were studying roly-poly bugs. I know they have more scientific name. We called them roly-poly when I was a boy. And if they were studying like lobsters and things of that sort. So, all right. So again, we're looking at the tail as it curls around like so. It's got a little bit of a spike on the bottom right here. I'm going to get another section just beyond it. And all right, cool. So this is kind of like coming together. You can kind of see it turning into a lobster. With more detail, it'll become more convincing. All right, so I don't have the best angle on the tail right now. I think I could probably get like a better thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over to the lobster. I'm going to move its tail around so I can see some of those, like, I don't know the names of those little fins that stick out of the end of the tail. I'm going to call them those things at the end of the tail. Very scientific of me. And then we're just going to see if we can kind of come up with something cooler. He doesn't really want to move. I think we're going to have to just, we're going to have to work with what we have right there. So the tail doesn't really have too much like flex. So I'm going to keep it on that. And then I'm going to kind of put these like little fins coming off the back here. So, all right. So it goes like 1, then 2. And that's pretty much all that I can see right there. So like maybe 1 and 2. So maybe we can even stretch it beyond what we can see from this angle. And we can pretend as if we're seeing it a little bit more three-dimensionally. And we'll put like the indication of some, as if it's like curling around or something like that. So I'm kind of like stretching the truth right there. But I'll do that in drawing and painting all the time. So is everyone able to hear? I just had an audio issue come up. 1 second. All right, are you guys able to hear me now? Sorry that it cut out. I'm not sure what happened, but if you give me 1 moment, I'm going to change some batteries, and I'll be right back. So, is that good? Are you guys able to hear me now? Are you guys able to hear? Everyone's all good? Cool. I don't know what happened. I just replaced, I just put new batteries in there just the other day. Sometimes batteries are just bad and I don't know why. So let's keep on with our drawing. Okay, we have the tail all mapped out. We have, somebody wrote in that they have the fan right here. So I'm gonna just focus on, like, let's say the face again. So with the face, I'm gonna move our little picture over to here. And let's zoom in on his face, just so we can get like an indication of an eyeball. So I don't think that lobsters have the most compelling eyes in the, I don't know if it's the animal kingdom, I don't know how to categorize it. So we're just gonna draw 1 eyeball right there and call it a day when it comes to that eyeball. But then let's look over again at, like, I don't know, like all these like little like horns right here. That's going to kind of distract us from the big picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that little eye in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to return to, like, I don't know, I'll put like a couple spikes in right here. We could always return to something like this and go into much more detail. But for right now, I'm just going to put in those few spikes around the eye. Maybe he has those spikes around his eye because that's an area of weakness. And if he's sparring with other lobsters, maybe that's one area where he wants to be protected. So I'm just making that up. I don't know if that's the case. But the design in nature is marvelous. All right, so I want to get over to that claw as soon as possible so that we can have like a really cool claw right here. So let's jump over right there. All right. And I'm going to kind of like put some spikes in as I walk around this claw here. And sometimes it's hard to even explain maybe what I'm doing or even what you're doing. We just have to kind of look at it. Okay. Now the claw turns around right here. And this is the top of it, which looks really cool. And I think you can just go bigger and bigger with the claw. It just gives the guy more power. All right, cool. So that works there. Now I'm jumping over. So the inside of this guy's claw has all these, like, it's almost like a serrated edge of a knife. And the inside of the claw just like turns. There's a spike and a spike. It just keeps on, all these spikes just keep resurfacing. All right, so the upper part of the claw right here, so you can almost think of your hand. The upper part of his claw is like separated from his thumb. And obviously he doesn't have a true thumb, but I just mean it's almost like they're separate compartments. Like the thumb inserts into the larger claw. So let's, as we look at this, let's try to like get the insert of that claw right there. So there's like a cutoff right here, where there's another spike, and then you can feel like a real separation. And then we're gonna jump over to the other side right here. Now the inside of his claw, what I would suggest is, as you're working on this, what I would do if I were you is I would go over, and so here is my drawing station. So check out that pencil right there. You see how sharp I have that? So that's a really sharp pencil right there. And I'll hold it even closer to the camera. I hope you can focus on that. You can see just how sharp this guy is. So I want a really sharp pencil for what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to get this real detailed right over here. And I'm going to get like real tiny bits of information. So it might even be worthwhile for me to zoom in just a hair more. And I'm just getting these tiny little spikes on the inside of his hand right there. So I'm going to just pick this up so you can see just how tiny those spikes are. And I say this all the time, but I do think just returning to the same themes is worthwhile. You could go to town with this and draw it with so much more detail. But the important thing right now is to just get the big idea and then some details. You can't go to town on every little bit of detail, because if you do, you might lose sight of the whole drawing too quick. All right, so I can take that precise pencil. I can swap back to my less precise pencil. It's a little bit darker right here. What I oftentimes do is I keep a sanding block right here so that I can get my dark pencil like nice and sharp, just like that. And this is just a piece of wood with sandpaper, just like simply put onto it. So, all right, back over here. Now I'm gonna go to that far claw, and I'm going to show my viewer that there's this cool like moment right here, and it almost is like human anatomy, which is crazy to me, to see the comparison between all the creatures that God created, just how some of it is, I don't know, it's almost as if there's like a connection between the bicep and the upper arm of Lobster and the bicep upper arm of a human. And I'm definitely using words that aren't correct. I know Lobster does not have a bicep, but right here it looks like it, because if you look at the inside of your arm, so I'll pull my shirt up right here, and you can see how my arm inserts inside of here, and it's almost like this houses my arm. So what happens on our arms is our bicep inserts into something called a radial tuberosity, and it goes in between two muscle groups right here, and there's like a housing for our biceps so that we can go like that with our arm. So when you look at the lobster, what's really neat is you can actually see there's like a housing right here where it's like a pretty similar thing, where somehow it's like received into there. So again, I know this is like kind of like funny to draw comparisons, but like I do like to do it. I do like to see like how the one relates to the other. So it feels like it's received into there. There's a bunch of spikes going along here, and I'm just gonna kind of put those spikes in. I can always come back and refine all of this. And then I'm going to get kind of like that area of the thumb right here. And so from my angle where I'm sitting, it kind of like is a little bit lost, the one into each other. So there's a little tip that I'll give to you guys with drawing a painting. So when you're drawing a painting and you have, like, let's say 2 claws or something like that, or 2 hands, or whatever it might be, you never want to put them perfectly like opposite each other, where they look like absolutely perfect. Hey, I see a roly-poly drawing. That was cool. You never want to put them exactly opposite each other in perfect symmetry in a drawing. If you have a hand, put one hand like, let's say like this, and then like the other hand like that. you always like change it up a little bit so that it doesn't like too perfectly echo. Otherwise it kind of can just feel boring. It's a rule. Rules sometimes exist. We can break them. But for our drawing right here, let's have the one claw like really visible, and then the other, we're kind of combining the two of them where they overlap each other. We can hint at the serrated edge of the claw right here, and then it's just kind of lost. So we have most of our form like generally mapped out. We're going to put in some feet right here. So the lobster has all these tiny little crawly feet, and the feet can be thought of in very simple terms. They're pipes, and the pipes have like little ball joints, and the pipes, simply put, they just link to each other. So I'm not trying to draw individual feet necessarily. I'm actually just trying to draw a succession of pipes that just link. And so I'll zoom out and I'll show you what I mean by that. So here's a pipe right here. And you can practice this. You can actually just go, if your parents have PVC pipe in the garage or something like that, or if you have a cardboard tube, you can just like practice like turning shapes like that so that it changes angles. And then you can learn how to draw something. You can learn how to draw a lot of different things just by learning how a pipe turns the perspective that you might have. So that right here, there applies to this right here. And I'll throw in like a couple more details. Lobsters have really cool antennae. So these antennae are wild, they're big. And it seems to me that the antennae have to be longer than the claws so that it could feel ahead of itself and figure out where it's going. So these antennae, they come out really far and zany. What I'm going to do is I'm going to design the antenna that I want to see. So if the antenna goes up like kind of like that, maybe I want to see it like some way a little bit cooler. So I'm just going to go, whoa, just like that. And then I'm going to echo it with another one to be a little bit more careful with the second one so that it hugs the shape of the first. And then I'll get my second antenna. I want my second antenna to like shoot out here to the side. So check this out. I'm just going to just make up, I'll do it in the air a few times first to figure out what I want to do. That's kind of it. So I'm just going to boom, like that. And those antennae can be so cool looking. All right, so it's not perfect. Some spots I have to tidy it up, but it works well enough. So I have the second antenna in. So now, as with all the things that we work on, we want to think of lighting our form. But before I do that, I want to give you another lobster story because I just have so many stories connected to lobsters. I just think it's funny. My wife met this man who was driving a car. He was driving us to an airport. And as this man is driving us to the airport, he's telling a story about how he goes off the east end of Montauk on Long Island. How many of you guys know Montauk on Long Island, the east end? So he goes off the east end of Montauk and he goes snorkeling and he goes down and he goes swimming and he sticks his hands into the rocks. I'm not kidding you. And what he does is he moves his fingers like little fish and he pulls his hands out. And my wife is talking to him. She's like, that's crazy. Like you just stick your hand into the dark rocks and you pull your hands out. And he's like, yeah, it's really cool. I get a lot of lobster doing this. It's just so much fun. And then as he's talking, he's like, but one time the lobster moved his claw quicker than I could get my hand out. And he lifts up his hand and his finger was all bent like crazy. And he's like, yeah, that lobster is quicker than me. It like mangled his finger. And my wife was like, oh my goodness, I bet you never went lobstering again off of Montauk with your fingers. And he's like, oh, I still do it all the time. He's like, I just got to be sure I move quick. Like, would you ever go swimming in the dark waters off Montauk and stick your hand in between the rocks? I would never do that. I just thought that was a crazy story. All right, so back to our drawing. We are going to now light our drawing. So to light our drawing, we come up with our imaginary light bulb. You know, we always just like stick the light bulb over here. You can erase that. That's why I always draw it so sloppy. But we just come up with a directional arrow for that light. So if everything that we drew can be reduced to its purest geometric essence, then you can ask yourself, okay, well, what is this lobster claw? I'm just going to tidy up with my eraser. What is a lobster claw? What's the body? What are the legs right here? What's the tail? And the answer to most of this is most everything is pretty much like somewhat of an egg shape. Like this is kind of an egg shape right here. This is kind of an egg shape right here. This is definitely an egg shape, definitely an egg shape. So we know from doing our courses how to shade an egg. And the answer is that the light is just going to fall on the left side and that on the right side, it's going to be in shadow because the light cannot reach on the far side of that egg. So what I want you to do is start drawing in, shading in the far side of the eggs. And you could say like, well, it's complicated because this egg has two parts. So then maybe think of this as, instead of being one big egg, think of it as being like, almost like, I don't know, like a long, thin egg and maybe stretched out cube. You can make stuff up in your head to solve complicated problems. And I do that all the time as I work. All right, so now I have that mapped out. Let's look at the light that's hitting our object and think about it. So that's pretty much in keeping with what we're looking at. We come back to our drawing. It's going to be dark over here in the crook of his elbow. Then let's go to the large part of his body. And the large part of his body is generally in shade right here. The far side of his body, I'm sorry, not the large part. The far side of the large part. And then we can use our trick. And so you see me do this all the time. I use my fingers to smudge in those big, broad areas like that. Sometimes I'll go over and I will get my blending stump. So you can get a blending stump like this, or you can get a smaller blending stump. It doesn't really matter. I get my blending stump and then I come back to the drawing and I can cover large areas quickly. So maybe I went too far with that. Maybe I should pull it back just a little. And we're going to jump over to right here. The other alternative as you're drawing, and I talk about this pretty often, is you can actually take graphite that is left over from sharpening your pencils, or as I have right here, I have actually graphite powder that I buy in a package. And I get it all over my fingers like that. And then what you can do is you can shade in even quicker on your drawing by using your fingertips. And when I was younger, I would sometimes read some art books and they would say, get your pencil super sharp when you're about to shade and always shade with like, very sharp pencil and never use like smudging or anything like that. And as you'll hear me say in my courses on my website, I actually, as I went along with my studies, I learned from the Russians. The Russians are really, really great artists and some just phenomenal painters that I really admire. And they will use their fingertips. They use paintbrushes to draw. They use every trick in the book to get the effect that they're looking for. And so I'm a big advocate of using everything at your disposal, namely your fingers, your blending stumps, whatever it might be. Okay, so now we have a lot of the light mapped out right here. And what we can do is we can increase the sense of light by, again, going back to, this is my graphite powder, and you can go and you can grab graphite powder and you can shade in a big area like that. Or you can just grab your pencil and you can just move really quick. And I want to put light on the far side of the lobster right here I want to put shadow on the far side of the lobster right here so that it increases the sense of light right there. So I'll just put shadow up against that light. And then what you can even do, which is another interesting trick that I came up with over time, is you can grab paper towel. And then you grab your paper towel and then you go like this and you bunch it up and you can smudge it over your drawing to get things really blended in really quick. So it's like a big broad effect, like really quickly. So I get that like all mapped out. you could take all these principles that we're using today, and you can actually use them to do a highly detailed painting, not even of a lobster. Let's stretch ourselves for a moment and say you could do a really detailed painting of an army tank with everything that we're studying at the moment. All right, so I'm grabbing a darker pencil. So this is right here, a 6B pencil, and I want to put in a nice cast shadow below this guy. So what I'm going to do with the dark pencil is I'm going to dig in and look at how rich and dark and deep I'm digging in right here. I want to give him a really strong cast shadow so that I could really pop out the armor plates of this guy. So there's my strong cast shadow. Going in really deep and dark. And on the far side of here, I'll even go in really deep and dark. And it's kind of cool. Now he feels like he's like almost lifting off the table a little bit. And there's an infinite number of ways that, we can cast shadows and whatnot. I'm just showing you like a really quick trick of getting in some cast shadow so that he feels like he's on top of a surface. And again, I'll get my blending stump, and then I'm going to turn this super soft because I don't want it to really compete with my drawing. I want it to feel like it's a soft, dark shadow. All right, so getting some more of that information coming up here. Nice. So, all right. So maybe I want to put a little bit more information right here so that the light feels convincing on the claw. I want my lobster to like kind of be the lightest thing. And with that, we have like basically like a rough mapped out drawing of a lobster, which again, we could take into so much more detail. But I wanted to take a look at all of your drawings. And if you guys are comfortable with it, you can hold up your drawing and you can show me what you're working on. I have so many names on the screen, so I'm just going to